As it is still in the game on News Central TV. Now we're heading straight to Delta State, Asaba, where at the Stephen Keshi Stadium, where the National Youth Games is currently to be kicking off in a short time, talking about the opening ceremony. Now remember, this is the 8th edition of the Games, and athletes are already gathered. And this is where we'll talk about grassroots, where we'll get to select, see these young stars who can actually be groomed into top talents, and a lot of sporting stars have been discovered from games like this one. Now we have joining us to talk about this, head of sports, Trend 100.9 FM in Asaba, talking about Julian Ajunwa. Thanks for joining us today, Julian.
Yeah, thank you so much, Udoka. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, the National Youth Games is upon us, and the athletes are gathered, and Delta State, as usual, they know how to host these events. And again, the governor has promised to have an exciting time for both the athletes and the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. The governor has done a remarkable job so far, talking about His Excellency Elder Sheriff Oborevwori. This is part of the 4-year contract that the Delta State government had with the Federal Ministry of Sports to host the National Youth Games for the next 4 years. So the first one happened last year, and this is the second one. So 2 more to go. So this is the second of 4 editions. And like you rightly said, the governor yesterday visited the main bowl of the Stephen Keshi Stadium, where you've got most of the facilities that will be used for the games. And from what he said, chatting with journalists afterwards, he's impressed, he's happy with the state of facilities, the maintenance culture as well, and he was also able to see most of the athletes who are going to compete. And like you rightly promised, this year's edition promises to be better than what we had last year. So I have no doubt the governor has done well, funds have been released. He has also been able to appoint a vibrant and working LOC led by the chairman, Chief Solomon Ogba, and others in the committee as well. So everyone has done a fantastic job to ensure that Delta State hosts a remarkable National Youth Games for 2024.
You know, I'd also like to ask, this is the National Youth Games, and schools just resumed on Monday, and I'm sure a couple of these athletes will also be present in Delta State to represent their country's state and all of that. And I mean, their state to be precise. Don't you think this will affect their schools, or do you think there were communications between schools and the organizers?
Well, some schools, most schools in Delta were told to carry on resumption as at Monday, which was the 9th of September. So some schools in Asaba, especially for those whose facilities are going to be used, because some school facilities are going to be used during the youth games, and you cannot have the youth games on and still have school resuming at the same time. It's not going to be good. So those were the schools that were told to hold on until the 23rd of this month before they commence the first term studies and all of that. So it's just for some schools in Asaba, some schools that are affected because their hostel facilities and their school are going to be utilized to host the rest of Nigeria. So it is quite understandable. I'm sure the parents understand. The parents are even excited to see some of their kids participate in this competition, because some of these athletes you're talking about, or some of these pupils, are also going to be representing Delta State. So it's a win-win for everyone. Schools will resume, some have resumed on the 9th, while for the ones whose schools facilities are being utilized for the purpose of these games, their schools are going to resume on the 23rd. So it's still same of the same, and I don't think it's going to affect it in any way.
All right, so talking about these young athletes now, we know that these are events, these are games that we can actually use in discovering young talents. These youth games is actually supposed to be more like a discovery process for these young athletes. And I'm sure the goal isn't for them to go there to win. It's for them to represent themselves, represent their state, and also stand a chance to representing Nigeria when it comes to international events. So what have you seen so far with these athletes who will be on display later on?
Well, the athletes have undergone thorough screening. Kudos to the technical committee for doing a fantastic job to ensure that the athletes fit into the right age. Before, the youth games used to be for athletes 17 and below. At some point, it was 16, but now the Federal Ministry of Sports have said it's 15 and below. So if you're more than 15, you cannot compete in the youth games. So, and there are measures already designed to ensure that there are no cheats. It is very difficult for you to eliminate 100% the possibility of having some states coming with overage athletes and all of that, because there are no MRI scans to detect the actual age of these athletes. Even where there are MRI scans, you still have some countries, especially in football, bringing in footballers who, by facial look and all of that, are way over the age of 17 or 20, as the case may be. So the technical committee have done a fantastic job. I witnessed part of it yesterday, part of the screening exercise. It was fair on all states. It was thorough. The process was good. And all the athletes are excited, the ones that were allowed to compete. We've not heard of any disallowed athletes or any state who brought in an athlete over the age of 15. But like you rightly mentioned before, this is a competition specially designed to catch them young, specially designed to, bring up talent that can compete for Nigeria, possibly in the next junior championship or more years to come. Competing for Team Nigeria some months ago is a product of this event and many others. So that's just what it is. It's a purely developmental competition, as much as it's also developmental. These states are also here to win, because Delta have won the first 7 editions of the competition, but all the 7 editions of the competition. So they are like the standard bearers. They're like the ones who every team will be looking to emulate. And like you can see from the facilities on ground, they are top-notch, they've been adequately maintained. And most of these sports are going to take place inside the main hall of the stadium, where the governor and the SSG had visited in the last 2 days. So it's good. This is also a clarion call to other states who will be hosting this competition in the future, because it's not just Delta who is going to host. After these 4 editions now, we don't know if the memorandum of understanding will still continue with the present government and with the current Minister of Sport. By the end of the day, other states must emulate what Delta has done in terms of infrastructure and in terms of talent development.
Right, and I was going to touch on the facility right there in Delta. The Stephen Keshi Stadium is being maintained adequately, and this also goes out to other states now, because we can't keep using one particular state. We can't keep using one particular structure for events, because there'll be wears and tears on the pitch and everywhere, the tracks and everything. So there's something Delta is doing right that other states should actually emulate.
Yes, absolutely. They are maintaining the structures well. The governor just recently had some persons from Julius Berger just got a report on the Warri City Stadium. That's another stadium that can host international matches. That's the stadium, just like the one you have in Asaba, that hosted many international competitions, not just football, but even the African Senior Athletics Championship in 2018, the National Sport Festival 2 years ago, the Youth Games last year, and all of that. So in terms of infrastructure, kudos to the governor. He's doing a remarkable job trying to ensure that they maintain what they have in Asaba, the Stephen Keshi Stadium. That was built by his predecessor, former Governor Ifeanyi Okowa. And it's only natural that he comes in on board as governor to ensure that that structure is maintained properly, and to also ensure that the one in Warri is good enough to host at least Warri Wolves, because Delta State has got Warri Wolves playing in the NNL, so they should be playing in that stadium and the matches in the NNL. But because the stadium is not 100% ready yet, that's why they're playing in another stadium still in Delta. So the focus now is on getting the Warri City Stadium ready and improving more on the infrastructure. And it's something that other states needs to emulate. States like maybe Lagos, states like Kano. There's nothing wrong in taking the event to the north. We've had Kwara host for quite some time now, and Delta is hosting now for the next 4 years. So the National Sports Festival will be hosted in the state in 2025. So it will not be out of place to also have other states, like you mentioned. If it goes around, the more the merrier, instead of having just one state host the competition every single year. So this is a big task for other states who do not have any intention of improving their infrastructure. That sport is a unifying factor. Sport is what brings people together. And the more that these state governors in particular are trying to invest in infrastructure, the better it is for their states. I'm particularly disappointed, that a state like Rivers has decided not to compete in this competition, citing paucity of funds or things like that. I don't know if that is actually the case. Someone even said perhaps they're saving the money for the National Sports Festival in Ogun State next year. Yeah. But all in all, every state, from the first to the last, must invest heavily in sports, must invest heavily in grassroots development. And that's why when teams say, oh, Delta is winning, sometimes they use overage athletes. And it's not just about that. That's not really the case. These athletes have been in close campaign for quite some time now. So they've been preparing for so long, even before now. At the moment this one ends, they're already preparing for the next one. So if states can also inculcate that into their structure and into their level of planning, I'm sure that every other state will give Delta State a run for their money. It's not compulsory that they win all the time. But if they are the best team every year in the competition, then let them win. So it's a big challenge for other states to do well and do better in sport.
All right, we're looking forward to the games, and fingers are already pointing that Delta will definitely win this one, but we'll see how it will go. I would love to see another state get to win this one, but of course, if you do well, if you prepare well, then you would stand a chance to getting to win the games. But of course, congratulations to everyone in Delta State and for the hosting. We look forward to a glamorous event and looking forward to the talents that will be picked for the junior championships as well. Thank you very much, Julian, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Doka. Great to see you again, and enjoy the rest of the show. And we wish everyone here in Delta and all other states who have come here a history competition, and of course, safe trip to their respective states at the end of the competition on the 19th.
Right.